Welcome to Middle School Walk and Talk, a podcast series offering heart, hope, and health to members of our middle school communities. Hosts Phyllis Fagel and Jessica McGuire talk all things self-care, student well-being, school culture, and more. Middle School Walk and Talk is designed to support the concepts found in the Successful Middle School, This We Believe, and is a production of the Association for Middle Level Education. To learn more, visit AMLE.org. Today's episode, Do Schools Kill Curiosity? With guest Braden Giles.
Welcome back to Walk and Talk. Today we are joined by Braden Giles. Braden is representing Adolescent Success, which is AMLE's Australian affiliate, born in the 90s on the heels of AMLE's work. Braden's school has been partnering with the university on a design-focused research project exploring curiosity in middle school students. They're really working around one provocative question, which is, do schools kill curiosity? Braden, can you tell us a little bit about what led you and your team to explore this idea, and also how you've leveraged students as co-researchers within this project?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's my absolute pleasure to be here at the AMLE conference and join you in this conversation. A number of years ago, my school, St. John's Anglican College in Forest Lake, Brisbane, we partnered up with the University of Queensland, and it was their Science of Learning Research Centre at the time, which is now known as the Learning Lab. And we were very keen to explore well-being in our context. This was straight out of COVID. So post-pandemic, we had a huge rate of mental health concerns for our young people in our school. And we knew that we were doing a lot of really great things. Our community knew that we were doing some great things, but we didn't really have a strong way of articulating that. So from the onset, we were keen to develop a wellbeing framework, something that would support us in speaking a common language amongst our students across the campuses. And from there, our focus on, that notion of teachers as researchers really grew. And so after we completed that project, our small research team, we kind of just gathered around the table and said, hey, that was really cool. What do you reckon we could jump into next? And we threw a couple of things out there. We could have gone down a proper teaching and learning path to develop a different framework or something like that. But we were quite interested in curiosity. This notion of curiosity. We had a whole range of hunches going into it. We could identify student A was a really curious kid, and what was it about them in a particular lesson where they might be demonstrating curiosity. We know that it links to 21st century skills. In our context, we really value it. We think it can be modeled to our students as well. But we wanted to find out, a little bit more about those hunches around curiosity and, what it looks like for our students. So we started on what's now become a 3-year research journey of curiosity, and be happy to talk through a couple of the, different things that we've done over those years. But really, at the moment, we are now in Year 3 focusing heavily on student voice and agency, and we've developed a student research team who's actually working alongside us. So that we are really featuring our key users of our classroom spaces and hearing it straight from them, what's most important in terms of a very strong community classroom that really does foster curiosity.
I'm curious, what are your students sharing that has made you maybe look at the issue differently?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Or is there anything you do differently now because of things they've shared with you?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, I can take you through a little bit of a quick journey, I guess. In Year 1, we wanted to find out our students' understandings of curiosity. When you do a quick Google research, there's so much out there, particularly in the world of education, a lot of research papers, a whole range of different articles out there, but there's not a whole lot that's relevant to the middle years space as well. And so we were really keen to make sure that if we're talking about curiosity, that our students understand what we're talking about, and that we're all speaking, again, that common language. So step number 1 for us was defining it in our context, and we looked at that through the lens of 3 core pillars of motivation, interest, and desire at the heart of curiosity. And then in our first year, we focused on student-teacher understandings of curiosity, and we developed the Curiosity Index. So essentially a measurement of our students' self-reported curiosity levels. From that, we were able to identify some of our top students who was self-reported very high in terms of curiosity, and some at the other end. And we conducted some student interviews just to get a finger on the pulse of curiosity. And so that was our first chance at really sitting down with the kids and starting to unpack what curiosity meant for them. Following that, we thought, okay, now that we know that this is important for our students, how can we perhaps influence a culture of curiosity in our school? And that was sort of year 2 of the project. And we did a whole range of workshops with our students as well. We sat them down for a few more conversations about this, but the more that we were having the conversations, the more it kept coming back to a few key influencing factors for them. And the biggest one was the classroom environment. And, we want these young people to feel that sense of connection and belonging as soon as they walk into a classroom space, so that they feel comfortable to be able to show curiosity, to go down that metaphorical rabbit hole. We want our teachers to be able to embrace that in their classrooms as well, so that they go, ooh, that's a really cool point. Let's take pause of what we're doing and let's explore that topic together. And so year 3 now has really been focused on our classroom environments and what we can do to, change the classroom in terms of the setup, the design, the colour, the lighting, all of those wonderful things to influence a culture of curiosity within our classroom spaces.
What are some markers, if I were to walk into a classroom, what are some visible markers that I could observables, that a student is feeling belonging and we're fostering all of the things that you're talking about, that motivation to learn and that connection to the community?
Well, we gathered a range of data from the students in terms of, what is it about these classes? So we pretty much did a full analysis of 5 of the key learning areas that they told us were quite important to them at school in a bit of a workshop. And they developed a heat map of the things that they felt were inhibiting curiosity, promoting curiosity, and perhaps opportunities for us to look at things differently. So the kids were telling us, the old-fashioned desks in rows, they hate that. Middle schoolers love social curiosity and they love learning with and from their peers. And so naturally that was one of the changes that we wanted to look at. One of our classroom spaces that when we walk in as a teacher, we go, yeah, this looks like a normal classroom setting. Our students walked in and they went, there's 4 different styles of desks in here. There's about 3 different styles of chairs. There's outdated student work on the walls, and there's a couple of posters and things that have seen more teaching hours than any teacher in the school that have just been there for so long. And so these were things that we weren't necessarily picking up on, but it was having an impact on our students the moment they step foot into the classroom. And so in terms of some, visible markers, we're kind of taking a staggered approach, because the last thing we would want to do is make all of these changes according to the students and what's important to them, because we wouldn't really be able to measure, how effective any one of those might be. So our very first measure we did was we took a key classroom with, a trial, and we gave the students free rein. So I waited outside the door and I said, go in, pull the classroom to bits, you have a look around, you figure out how we might be able to make this a little bit more conducive for your curiosity levels within the classroom space. And so the very first thing that we had discussed then was decluttering. So we got rid of the old filing cabinets that were sitting in the back of the classroom, the old student books, the old outdated student work. We also then looked at furniture. And in schools, budgets are a massive thing. So we were pretty upfront with the students and saying, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here and say, let's gut it and bring in the absolute best furniture that you would love to see. So we actually went around and we developed a lookbook. So we went around to all of our different classroom spaces, we took some photos, and then we gave them pretty much like a little, here's what you have access to in terms of the desks and the chairs and the other little nice things for the classroom. And they were talking to us about the natural features that they really liked in some of our middle school classroom areas. So we brought in some new desks that have just that nice sort of clean wooden natural feature look, new chairs in that space as well. And the third thing was the groupings. So again, that social curiosity that wanted to get away from desks in rows, which is a historical trend in a lot of our schools, and they wanted to focus in on more sort of group work. And so those are, the first 3 visible markers that you would see stepping into this trial classroom. What we're now looking at is also some flexibility. So bringing in some movable whiteboards as well, because a student said, hey, I'd really love to actually have access to one of these right behind our little pocket here. So if we want to explore something as a group, we can turn and we can write on the whiteboard. So that's our next step. After that, we're going to be looking at colour. Probably something that sometimes we might take for granted in our schools. When the student's walking into the room, you know, we're just walking in and we just see, here's the four walls of our wonderful classroom space. They're walking in and they're saying, that colour is really giving me this particular feeling. And already, as soon as I walk into this classroom, I'm feeling a sense of angst or anxiety just due to the colour palette in here. Or it might be the harsh, unnatural lighting that they're getting. As well, you know, not enough access to natural light or being able to see the wonderful greenery that we've got at our campus too. So we're looking at a nice cost-effective way to perhaps change the colour palette within the space so that according to our students, it will be a lot more inviting to foster that sense of belonging and connection as soon as they step in. And then our last measure that we're going to be introducing with our trial class is the notion of zoning. So just setting up those few different pockets in the room. So we might have some of the desks set up for a nice explicit teaching zone, might have an individual space towards the side, and then more of a collaborative zone so that the students have a bit more choice in where they might like to sit or work depending on what the teacher's doing in that particular lesson.
Oh, I imagine it's very affirming for kids to be able to give you that feedback and then see it take shape in the trial classroom.
Yeah, it certainly is, because we were quite upfront with these students in the research project, and we've gathered some artifacts along the way. Just, you know, talk down the barrel of a camera and tell us about your experiences. And so we said to them from the onset, look, what we're hoping to get out of this is you're telling us the classroom environment is so important for curiosity. That's probably one thing we can have a lot more control over as well within the college. So if you're telling us this is going to be best, maybe we can try and set that up in majority of our classrooms to try and replicate that for you. So no matter which classroom you're timetabled in, you're stepping into that nice, conducive curiosity space. But it's also going to have an impact on a new build that we're doing at our campus. So we're currently developing an aquatic centre. There'll be 8 new classrooms that are coming online there as well. And so in one of the interviews that we did with a Year 7 boy, he was just so excited about the thought that I'm involved in this project. I'm seeing this in a trial room now. We're sort of gathering a bit of data, and then hopefully I'll be the end user of that space, you know, as I'm moving through my school journey, and I'll be able to be in that classroom that, you know, I've designed essentially, which is really cool.
Well, what's really interesting to me about the physical design and the changes that the students wanted to make is that, so I see kids in private practice in addition to being in a school, and often whether it's the school or private setting, when kids are really overwhelmed, they can't really talk about what's on their mind, and the first thing we have to do is just clean their backpack.
Yep.
And what really struck me about all of the changes that they were suggesting is they were essentially looking to create more of a Zen environment so that they had that mental bandwidth to focus on school. I imagine it's going to help a lot more than just piquing their curiosity. It's also going to help their emotional well-being. Your first research project is going to come in handy with this one. Have you had a chance to really test it out and see if it feels to you? Maybe not the numbers yet, but have you been able to see a marked difference or change?
We have so far. So those measures that I spoke about before, the 6 of them, we've kind of, we're working our way through them at the moment. We're kind of halfway there. We've gathered a little bit of data so far from some of our little guinea pig classes in there, but we're sitting around that 70% with very positive ratings of those few things having a positive impact on, you know, the curiosity levels and how they're feeling in the classroom space. So it's a nice affirming number starting off, and we're hopeful that once we can get a few more of these measures in place, track that as we're going as well, then we'll have, I guess, a broader perspective of what it's going to look like.
By the time you're done, you're going to have blue light bulbs, you're going to have plants around that room, they're going to be piping in good smells.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to be nice for the teachers too, yes.
That's another key aspect of the connection and the belonging as well, because sometimes in the middle school and in the secondary school setting, a teacher might be timetabled into, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 different classrooms. Right. Sometimes it might be multiple for the one class. And so we wanted to try and approach this through the lens of what can we do to make the classroom a much better, safer environment, so that no matter where you are in the school, you're walking into a lovely classroom that you're very happy to teach in, that your kids are going to feel that sense of safety, so then they can almost let go and go down that rabbit hole of curiosity.
So outside of the trial classrooms, I'm sure many of the teachers that aren't directly involved in the project, but like there's probably some maybe unintended communication about what that is. So how is that trickling into other teachers' classrooms already? Because we've talked a lot about physical spaces, but the physical space then kind of dictates how you can instruct, or how you do instruct, or how you have kids engage with one another, right?
Yeah.
Have you just seen the trickle to other spaces already?
We have, yeah. So we haven't shared a whole range of our data set to date within our school. We're still sort of gathering all of that package, if you will. But just through our walkarounds that we're doing, we're actually seeing more classrooms shift away from the traditional, what you might expect to see with your desks in rows, to a lot more pods, particularly in our middle school precinct. I'm seeing a lot more student work on the walls that's actually contemporary. It's building on that sense of identity and sense of belonging, which is so wonderful to see as well. And it's also, I guess, just changing the atmosphere. It's one of those things that would be very hard to measure if you're walking into the classroom, but you can tell from when you're walking past how the teacher's engaging differently with the pods of students. And, you can see how engaged those kids are when they're able to learn from and with their peers in that sort of social setting too. So it's great that, although we haven't made it explicit, all of the things that we've gathered so far, and this might be our intended outcome at the end, to have an influence over all these classrooms. People are kind of seeing that in our trial one, and they're taking steps to, I see what's happening now. I might trial this just in my own little space as well, which is really cool, really affirming.
Cool. I love that.
I'm thinking about the use of language and the fact that you knew you needed to first define what curiosity is for these kids, and that really resonated for me. I have a colleague who does an emotional granularity lesson, and one of the sets of words that he presents to them to define, and it's much, much harder for kids to define in words than it is for them to show on their faces or even to act out, which is interesting to me too. But one of the sets of words that he presented them with was curiosity, wonder, and awe. What is the difference between those three words? And then showed some videos, and they had to pick out which one was which emotion. And I was really struck by how hard it was and how they couldn't do it. And not only that, they needed actually a few other additional reminders of what the differences were. And in terms of how they fixed it and how they approached the problem, it almost doesn't matter which one it was, because it's going to work for everything anyway. But this is, to me, what they were saying is, this is how I'm going to experience school in a way that's going to bring out the best in me. What have you seen in terms of labeling the research and how they interpret it, and what's different about the way they approach it versus how you're approaching it?
Sure. Well, I guess from the students' perspectives, the key part of us defining it was because kids were saying, this might just be me being engaged, or it's me asking questions, or it's me wanting to know more. And so it took us quite a long time to actually figure out what it actually means in our context. And so that's why we focused on, designing our own definition that would suit our school, our kids, our teachers as well. And obviously there's an inextricable link there with the wonder and the awe that you spoke about, a real sort of emotional feeling that might be attached to curiosity too. But when we delved into the rabbit hole of all of the research that was out there, there was a lot to do with a key difference between situational interest and curiosity. I might be sitting in a classroom environment and I'm really involved and I'm really engaged at this point in time, but am I actually curious? And so what the research was telling us was that one of the main differences there was that there's a knowledge gap, and it's the taking action on that knowledge gap that really hones in on, I guess, the core of what we're talking about when we're talking curiosity. So it's that kid that has the motivation, that interest, but then that desire to actually act upon a knowledge gap. They walk into a classroom and they go, oh, I see that you've got some pretzel packets sitting here. That looks pretty cool. And then it might be the other child that walks in and goes, oh, Dot's home style. I wonder if this is local to the Indianapolis area. I'm going to go and actually delve into the rabbit hole. I'm going to go and find that out. So it's not just that's a cool thing. I'm engaged in what's sitting here in front of me. It's okay, I've got this gap in my knowledge. what am I actually going to do to rectify that? Am I going to go down that metaphorical rabbit hole and find the answer that I'm looking for? And so that, when we kind of framed it up like that with our kids, that was almost a big wonder or aha moment for them as well, because then they were like, oh, I get this all the time when I'm doing this particular topic or this subject too, or when I walk into this particular space. And so that was really good just in framing up everything that we're doing. So when we're having the conversations with our student research team, or we're talking with our teachers, that we're not sort of skewing the lines between, well, are we focusing just on a student's behaviour or their engagement or their motivation right now? We're actually talking curiosity levels, and in particular with middle schoolers, that social curiosity.
I love that. And that's such a good example, because even for me, it brought to life what curiosity is.
And what motivates middle schoolers to be curious, social interactions,
That's
right?
Yeah.
Right? You've talked a little bit about the future of your research. What are you in particular most excited about in the future ahead?
I think it's really just empowering these kids that are in middle school to actually have a say. They're the end users of our classroom spaces, and I want every middle school student to be able to walk in and feel that strong sense of belonging. That they're becoming who they want to be, and that they have that strong psychological safety in every classroom space. But I also want the teachers to be able to say, at those key points, it's okay to hit pause on the curriculum or your teaching and learning structure and just say, look, this is so important to my kids right now at this moment. I'm going to meet them in the middle, and we're going to, go on this journey together. So the thing that gets me most excited is the fact that now that we've kind of started this journey with a student research team, where this can potentially take us, I'm very curious to know what that's going to look like at the end of the day. But then after we finish this project, it's almost like, okay, cool, well, what now? What can we do? We've proven this has really worked. We're still on that journey of, I guess, finalizing a lot of key things there, but just really keen and really curious to see what our next steps might be beyond this particular project, and how we can best utilize student voice and give them a say in what's most important to them in their schooling.
Absolutely. I'm sure your enthusiasm is infectious, because I'm now curious to see what you find out in your research. So we have this tradition. We ask one final question of everyone we interview. And the question is, what is one small change that any middle school educator can make to help either ignite or reignite curiosity in their classroom?
Oh, nice question. We have a lot of conversations, particularly through adolescent success and my work as a head of middle school as well, about meeting the kids in the middle. And I think that that's sometimes forgotten when we're stepping into particularly a secondary school setting. So I guess the biggest thing for me would be the notion of shifting from what works to what matters for our kids, and being a lot more intentional in all of our approaches to middle schooling, understanding that middle schooling that we knew it has changed so much regardless of where in the world we might be. And so taking proactive measures to meet kids in the middle and encourage our teachers to shift their thinking perhaps from what's worked historically to what matters most for the kids today.
Thank you. That is great advice. If our listeners want to find you or your work, how can they do that?
They can connect with me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I encourage anyone to connect with me there, and I'm more than happy to share the research that we've done, share some strategies through there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It was a great conversation.